Hey, it's your guy Tyrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to break down the tactical issues Manchester United encountered against Crystal Palace and how Bruno Fernandes played a key role in helping them overcome that to claim all 3 points and stay in that top four battle. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Manchester United in a 4-2-3-1 and Crystal Palace shifted into more of a 4-4-2 with Ayew and Zaha up front. So besides the fact that Ayew and Zaha did combine on a few occasions to force David De Gea into some saves, this was all about United trying to break down this Crystal Palace side. They dropped off into two narrow banks of four. They kept the fullbacks narrow also due to the fact that Greenwood was drifting centrally. If he wasn't ahead of Van Aanholt, he was positioning himself ahead of the center backs. That created space for Wan-Bissaka to push forward, but it looked like Crystal Palace were okay with their former player having all that space down that right-hand side. So as you can see, they're tucked in very narrow, and what ended up happening here was that they disrupted United from creating chances, and that was largely due to the fact that Bruno Fernandes couldn't get on the ball. Why was that? Well, when you look at how Crystal Palace looked to approach the game from the front, they had Ayew and Zaha dropping off the center backs, allowing Lindelof and Maguire to have time on the ball, but blocking off the passing lane into McTominay and Paul Pogba. This has been a common theme that United have faced over the past few weeks, with teams looking to box in their double pivot by having the forwards sit in ahead of them to block off the passing lane, while having the midfield duo of Milojevic and McCarthy stepping forward to apply pressure if they're able to receive the ball. The other problem that United had here was that Nemanja Matic wasn't playing in this game, and what we've often seen is that he would drop deeper to split those two center backs or shift to the left of Maguire to get on the ball. And the reason why that's so decisive for United is because Matic is often wrongly labeled as solely a holding midfielder, but he's also a deep line passer. So when he's able to drop off into that zone, he's able to pull out markers, and then he's able to free up space for Pogba and free up space for Bruno Fernandes to get on the ball. Here, that wasn't the case, and even when they did try to drop off deeper to get on the ball, whether it be Pogba or McTominay, you would see Crystal Palace being able to cope with that threat. When Pogba and McTominay tried to drop off into that zone, they shifted to the right of Lindelof, and there was one occasion where Zaha simply blocked off the passing lane into Paul Pogba and allowed Lindelof to push forward, and the other time when McTominay stepped into that zone, Zaha was quick to press him and close him down. They weren't too wary of McTominay dropping into that zone because he doesn't have the passing range of Matic or Paul Pogba, but nevertheless, that was how you ended up seeing Crystal Palace look to approach the game from the front. When you look throughout that midfield zone, MacArthur was tucking in narrow to join McCarthy and Milojevic based off the fact that they wanted United to play balls out to Wan-Bissaka, and overall, United's shape kind of played into their favor. Like I said, Greenwood was shifting across the pitch or adopting narrow positions ahead of Van Aanholt. You had Martial ahead of the two center backs, doing a good job when he could to link play. Ward was tight on Rashford, but he was also looking to come in central. And then Bruno Fernandes was starved for service. At times you would see him making runs in between the defensive banks to try and get the ball over the top, but we didn't see United play too many long balls to try and bypass that Crystal Palace deep shape. However, to be clear, Ayew and Zaha weren't disciplined enough to maintain this pressure throughout that opening half. So there were times where McTominay and Pogba were able to get the ball in those central zones. The issue here, though, was that Crystal Palace were comfortable with the ball being played ahead of them, and they comfortably swept up danger when it did arise. There's a time where Ayew didn't get close to McTominay and Milojevic did step, and McTominay ended up shifting out the ball to Rashford, but Ward was tight on him, and nothing came from that. Over on United's right side, we ended up seeing MacArthur ahead of Wan-Bissaka and Milojevic stepping out into the path of Pogba. And Wan-Bissaka was able to split both Crystal Palace players to find Greenwood dropping off of Van Aanholt. But we ended up seeing McCarthy come across to win the ball. There was a time where McTominay was free in that central zone and he was able to split Ayew and Zaha and Milojevic and McCarthy to find Martial dropping off a bit deeper. But with McCarthy coming across to apply a challenge, Martial ended up playing a loose ball into the path of Sakho. A similar move occurred towards the end of that first half, but this time rather than McCarthy stepping into the path of Martial, it was Milojevic and Sakho ensuring that Martial couldn't receive that ball ahead of the back four freely. But as you can see, when United did have those opportunities to play through that midfield zone, they struggled to get their key players into good positions due to Crystal Palace's narrow shape and great work rate. And the one question that you have to ask is, why couldn't Bruno Fernandes get on the ball? What we ended up seeing was that rather than simply trying to receive the ball in between those lines by shifting laterally or looking to break in behind, Bruno Fernandes ended up drifting out into that space beyond the narrow wide players, whether it be Townsend or MacArthur, to get on the ball. Whether it be him getting on the ball and trying to play in Marcus Rashford, who was in between McCarthy and Townsend, and then trying to dart into space behind Ward, or simply switching out diagonal balls out to Wan-Bissaka. As that first half persisted, you ended up seeing him drop deeper and deeper ahead of that Crystal Palace midfield bank, sometimes even as close as to Harry Maguire to get on that ball. But with United struggling to bypass that Palace midfield bank or bypass Zaha and Ayew's pressure, Bruno Fernandes had to drop off into those zones. And you saw his impact in that first half as he started to drop deeper. There was one time in transition where he clipped a long ball over Sakho for Marcus Rashford, breaking him behind the defense, but Rashford failed to get a shot on goal. And besides coming close to putting United ahead when he dropped off ahead of that midfield bank and fired a shot inches wide of the net, it was Bruno Fernandes from that wider zone that helped United get into the lead. He was able to drift across Townsend from that left channel to receive a McTominay pass. And what you ended up seeing from Bruno Fernandes was that he was able to combine with Martial ahead of Dan. And before McCarthy came in, once again, you saw that penetration and creativity from the Portuguese player as he bypassed Sakho and Dan to find Rashford running across Van Aanholt, and that ultimately led to United taking the lead. And even in the second half, when we did see more of United dropping off a bit deeper in their shape and looking to break on the counterattack, it was Bruno Fernandes still involved in United's best moves, finding space in that midfield zone as United were playing more in transition to get on the ball and influence the game. You look to some of their better chances in that second half. One, seeing Bruno Fernandes lead the counterattack and exploiting space behind Ward. He ended up sliding the ball out to Martial on that left channel, which pulled out Dan. What you end up seeing there is that no one was tracking the movement of Bruno Fernandes as he approached the box, and Rashford ended up pulling the ball back, splitting Milojevic and Sakho to find Bruno Fernandes, and he fired his effort off the post. And then even when you look to the build-up to United's second goal, once again it stems through transition, but what we have to look at here is one, Bruno Fernandes making a run into that left channel to drag out McCarthy, and then Townsend and Ward being split by Rashford's dribbling. What you end up seeing here is that Bruno Fernandes continues his run into that left channel zone and McCarthy stops tracking as he gives up on it. And then Rashford ends up sliding the ball out to Bruno Fernandes in that zone. At that moment, you have Milojevic and Dan shifting out to Bruno Fernandes, who is pushing forward. But Dan can't step because he has Martial just ahead of him. What we end up seeing from Bruno Fernandes here is that he ends up splitting Milojevic and Dan to find Marcus Rashford. And Rashford instantly pokes that ball beyond Sakho into Martial goal side of Dan, and that's how United were able to kill off the game. But as you can see, Manchester United encountered issues here, and the main one was that they couldn't get the ball into their key player Bruno Fernandes in advanced zones. United did miss Nemanja Matic here, and it does epitomize why they do need another ball-playing midfielder in that zone with Pogba, as teams can neutralize Manchester United's ability to break from deeper positions, especially if you don't have Lindelof or Maguire playing long balls over the top. What you can say was that Crystal Palace did a very good job of ensuring that even if United did break lines, they were swarming and winning the ball. And this game was about Bruno Fernandes finding gaps in deeper positions to get involved in the game. And once he was able to put United ahead with his creativity, what you ended up seeing was that the game was stretched and he was able to find more space in transition to impact the game, and ultimately that was the difference here as Manchester United keep pace with Chelsea and Leicester City for those top 4 spots. Hi everybody, thanks for watching and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the interview show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the Interviews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.